sometimes you have to step back from that and say, why am I in so much drama in this relationship? And I did that this summer. I had a very close person in my life who has been engaging me in an ego drama for quite some time. And I finally said, I need to really step back from this and see what happens if I step back, because I feel like I'm trapped in a role that I have to play and I don't have any choice, and I feel victimized by it. And as I stepped back and said, even if it means I'm a bad person, because my ego is telling me that I'm going to be a bad person if I step back from this relationship, I'm going to do it anyway and see what happens. I'm going to trust that person is going to be okay, and that I'm going to be okay, and that our relationship even will be okay, because I do care about this person. And so as I stepped back, it felt very hard and it felt very scary.
Hola, everyone. Let's start healing. I'm Adrianne Murchison, and welcome to episode 48 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. I think by now, this year, 2020, we kind of know that. I think we kind of know that. Well, my guest today, Stephanie Dean, and I, we are going to touch on this truth in the so many different things that we talk about. Stephanie is a spiritual sister of mine. She is really one of those people that looks within, and she'll talk about that, how she's had to go within and really just face some truth within herself to be able to navigate this pandemic. I can so relate to that because I've absolutely had to do that too. One of the things she says about this year is that it's been a year of the ego burning itself off. And of course, we're human, so we're always going to have an ego. But we know that thing that's personal to us as individuals. We know when that thing rears its head and it's out there a little too much, or it's holding us back. And so it's been a year of facing that for Stephanie and for me as well. So I really enjoy what she shares, and I'm touched by what she shares. She works in corporate America and analyzes data, and she'll explain that briefly in our conversation. But we'll talk about race, and we'll talk about, she'll talk about her relationship with God. It's a really, really nice conversation. And so what I would love for you to do, whatever platform you're listening on, I would love for you to leave a review on the platform that you're listening on. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Send me an email also if you like. I always want to know what you think about all of our episodes. So anytime, send me an email at letstarthealingpodcast@gmail.com. So let's get to it. Let's meet her and let's start healing. Thank you for joining me, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we're in this pandemic forever, it feels like. And I want to start by asking you what you have learned about yourself during these months in this pandemic.
Well, it's been a long year, so I've had a lot to learn. One of the first things I learned that when we left our office on March 12th, I really had the strong feeling that we weren't going back anytime soon. And my manager, who worked right next to me, said, "You're packing up your headphones and your, all this equipment." And I said, "Yeah, I just want to be ready just in case, because I just feel like we're not coming back." But I had been in the office for 3 years, and prior to that, I'd been a work-at-home employee for almost 13 years. And I did not realize how much I missed it until I came home. And once I got home during the pandemic, I realized I don't want to go back. It was just such a refreshing change for my soul. I mean, It just was such a space of comfort and ease and return to my strength of being an introvert and being a person who really needs to be spirit-led and to be surrounded by my family and by things that comfort me. It really was a deep breath of fresh air.
And
that was the first thing I learned about myself.
Share with folks what you do in your job.
Well, I'm an analytics manager. So what I like to say that I do is I help people get to know how they like to see data. So 50% of my job is analytics projects, and 50% of my job is digital dexterity, which says that the way that you receive data and the way that you interpret data is up to you as an individual, but you can do things that will help to help you along the journey. So I teach people about the 3-second rule, which says that if you can interpret the visual in front of you in 3 seconds or less, then you're in good shape. And if you can't, you probably have moved on or not understood it the way it was meant to be shared, or you've made your own message in the between. So I teach about digital dexterity and just about how much we have to absorb in our world and how we really need to slow down and be very thoughtful and intentional about how we present.
And that transfers beyond to things other than numbers, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So I think that's part of the lessons of 2020 is we really need to slow down and be intentional. That is something that I want to get much more of in my life. And we've had a chance to do that this year.
So from working from home, like say for me, I was home for 10 years, not quite as long as you. And I started back in the office a month before the pandemic, and which was a big adjustment. And then when we came back home, it's really intense working from home. I prefer to work at home now, don't get me wrong, but it's really intense. Like I'm busy from the time I start to the time I'm done. So is it like that for you? Is it more stressful than before, or is it still an even pace working from home?
I would say it's an even pace. There are certainly times when the work drives you and it pulls you along at a pace that's much faster for you than you want to go. And so what that creates, especially from work at home, is that you never stop working. And so that's a real risk of people who work at home, is that they work 24 hours a day and even on the weekends. What I find is that I'm able to stop and prioritize, even if you just take 5 minutes and say, let me just stop for a minute and make a to-do list. And then if I look at that to-do list and I say, is this urgent and is this important? Then it helps me to really take a breath and find that those things that are not urgent or are not important will either solve themselves or get easily resolved so that you do have more time in the day. And I love some of the things that our company has offered us this year as a result of working from home, which include quiet days. So just on Monday we had the holiday, and Tuesday we had a quiet day. And so that meant no emails and no meetings and no pings and no phone calls. We were supposed to really be quiet at work so that we could be focused. And it's hard for people to get into the habit of doing that because we're so used to needing to have immediate response to a thought that we have. If I have a thought, I call somebody up, I have a conversation, I'm moving on, I'm making the actions and moving on. And to have to hold that until tomorrow is very, very hard for some people. But for others, it's very nourishing because it allows you to have deeper focus. And you can make that to-do list and you can start striking things off. And so it's very helpful.
Absolutely.
So it's been interesting.
I can't even imagine. I would love that. Did that just start since the pandemic, or you guys were doing that before?
No, we just started since the pandemic, and there's been such an overwhelming positive response to it that the company has said we're going to commit to doing this at least once a month. And they're trying to wrap it around holiday weekends so that people can take an extra day on the weekend comfortably without missing too much.
Yeah.
But it's been a true blessing that the company is really focused on some of those mental health nourishing things that help you to have better focus.
That's awesome. So you said something to me the other day. I wonder if you would share. It was so powerful, and I've been really thinking on it for myself. And you said something like, during this time, you've taken time to go within and accept things within yourself and just sit with things that you may or may not
Yes.
like about yourself. And that was so powerful for me because
Mm-hmm.
I've been just in the last couple of days. I do that anyway, but I've been just really just, I think, following your lead, what you described.
Yeah, it's been a year for all of us to deal with ego. I think we've had so much ego that sometimes it feels unbelievable, the things that we hear and see in the news, and the things that we're experiencing, and the things that people are willing to say, that you just say, are you for real when you're talking right now? Or is this really what you're thinking and what you're willing to say out loud? And it's been so shocking. But I think that this has been a year of the ego burning itself off and really coming up in a wild fury to be heard and seen in its most irrational form, in a way. And so I have had a few years of my personal ego coming up and really trying to protect me from things that it felt that I needed to be protected from. And so I'm probably going to spend more time than you might want about talking about the ego, but I've been rereading Eckhart Tolle's book called The New Earth or Un New Earth, and almost reading it sentence for sentence, because so much of what we do is meant to protect ourselves from our childlike ego's perception that we are not safe, when in fact we are safe. Our spirit and our souls are safe, and we're having a spiritual experience in a human body. So the body may or may not be safe. I mean, there is certainly some truth that the body may not be safe, but our spirit is always safe. And so we have to almost talk down our ego like we're talking to a child, to say, no, it's okay. You don't have to protect me right now. This is a lesson that I'm here to learn.
Right.
And so that is so hard. I mean, sometimes it is so hard because you can get intertwined with other people's egos very easily. Everybody who's in a drama is really in an ego drama, two egos battling with each other, or engaged with each other. And sometimes you have to step back from that and say, why am I in so much drama in this relationship? And I did that this summer. I had a very close person in my life who has been engaging me in an ego drama for quite some time. And I finally said, I need to really step back from this and see what happens if I step back, because I feel like I'm trapped in a role that I have to play and I don't have any choice, and I feel victimized by it. And as I stepped back and said, even if it means I'm a bad person, because my ego is telling me that I'm going to be a bad person if I step back from this relationship, I'm going to do it anyway and see what happens. I'm going to trust that person is going to be okay, and that I'm going to be okay, and that our relationship even will be okay, because I do care about this person. And so as I stepped back, it felt very hard and it felt very scary, because it was kind of wrecking to our home. It was a family member. It was wrecking to our home in terms of creating drama and dynamics that I was not comfortable with living with myself for creating for the family. And then over time, that actually started to settle down, but I became engaged with different family members in my home, in our coronavirus, sheltering home, that I realized that this is sort of coming up again in a different way. It's got a little bit different facet to it, but it's still me involved, and I'm still engaging and being triggered in certain ways that are causing me to respond in certain ways that I'm not necessarily proud of. So I stopped that one. And then I re-engaged again with a different family member. There are only so many family members in the home before you realize you're going to run out. So I had to start really looking within pretty quickly, because, if you don't, you run out, and then you find yourself very alone. So over the course of it, I realized, you know what? I think this is a lot me. And there may be other people who are having their own ego trips or ego dramas, but what I need to fix right now is mine. And so it's caused me this summer to really take it piece by piece. And the hard part, and this is where I think we may have been talking earlier this week, and I may have shed some tears, because, and I'm going to get a little serious here, stripping away of the ego is the most terrifying experience, because when you strip away the ego, you have to really look within, and those negative self-beliefs that your ego created long, long ago come back and that's all you have left. And when you really strip it down to say, okay, this is ego and I don't have to do this anymore. This is ego and I cannot do this anymore because I'm hurting myself and I'm hurting others. This is ego and I choose not to do this anymore because I choose to be a better person. And then at the end of the day, you find yourself saying, what is left of me? And if I can't be generous because being generous is egoistic, that means that I'm feeling superior by giving to others because I know that they need it and I have it.
Mm-hmm.
That there's a little bit of superiority in that. There's a little bit of superiority in caring for others and taking care of others because I have the ability to and they are not necessarily able to. There's a little bit of superiority in saying, I want to give you a vacation as a mom that you may or may not feel is
Mm-hmm.
something that you need, but I feel that I need for that connection. And so as I strip away all that, I think to myself, what is left in my personal relationships and what makes someone want to hang out with me and be with me and what makes me want to be worthy of that. And so then you really get left with this one thought, which is possibly two thoughts. Am I lovable and am I enough? And that really boils down to the core of where all of us are, why
Yes.
all of us create our ego trips.
Yes.
And it's hard. It's hard to express yourself. And I've had to express myself several times this summer, almost like making my amends with my family members to say, I realize this is ego. And when I say this, I'm afraid that you won't respond. But I know that you don't have to prove to me that you love me. And I don't need you to prove to me that you love me because I am going to claim that I am enough just as I am, even if you don't love me. And so it's not required for you to love me for me to be in a relationship with you. And it's like, that's just kind of overwhelmingly scary.
Yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. When I was thinking about just trying to do that exercise, I think that for me, it's caring about what other people think. And can I let that go? The important things to me, can I let that go? The areas where I think I'm responsible and maybe I just don't feel like being responsible, or maybe I'm weary about this thing and it doesn't mean as much to me as it used to. So I might look irresponsible, just, it could be all different things, but it all comes to how somebody that I think, not just one person, but, people that I may think highly of, or I value how they see me. And can I let that go and do what's important to me? And I feel like that's what's hard for me, in the way that what you just described. And it is a childhood thing. I think it goes back to my dad. My dad was just such a strong-minded person. He just think what he thought. And I think, no, that's not true. This is what's really going on, And so I know that it just kind of snowballed that way.
Yeah, and those are really tough trips. Those are really tough trips because we want to believe that our parents led us right and that they taught us what was right and that it was right.
Yeah.
And many times, though, they are right. And then sometimes they're not right for us, or sometimes they were just in the filter of their own ego and their own protective needs to protect us as kids. And we have to reframe that as adults and say, maybe as an adult, I can see that a little differently.
Yeah.
And,
or they don't know what they're necessarily, the message that's getting trickled down.
Right. And I would know one of the things that I've had to deal with this summer is being overly responsible. So I do have a certain sense of what I think I need to be doing and what I think I should do as a responsible adult to care for people in my life. But I find that I am, what people label as codependence. I definitely carry that.
I have,
but
that.
I also, I also carry just a sense of taking on responsibility for that which I really don't have any control over. And then I feel very frustrated because I can't control it, and I'm trying to control the other person to be more responsible for themselves so that we can both be happy. And I can't be responsible for other people's happiness. That's something that I've learned this summer, is that you can really only be responsible for yourself and in terms of your own happiness and your own peace. And while you can offer genuine kindness to others, you cannot take on the responsibility of making them happy, because that's a false trap.
Right, right.
So that's been one that sometimes our parents want to put that on us. Sometimes our family wants us, or other family members want us to say, hey, I'm not happy, so why do you get to do this? And I have to say, I'm okay spending my Sunday by myself meditating all day long, because
right.
that is important to me to be able to give more to you tomorrow.
And it's
and I
healthy.
have to make that right choice.
It's definitely healthy. How would you describe your spirituality for our listeners?
Well, spirituality is a very personal thing. So I think it has many expressions. I used to find a lot of spiritual connection when I was a child in church, and it was very important to me. And I read the Bible, and I was very, very committed to my religion in a spiritual manner. Over time, I started to feel a lot of obligation and a lot of guilt attached to that. And I started to have some questions about other faiths and just having a wider global perspective. And so I spent a lot of years questioning that. And now I've landed at there are many, many ways to find your truth. And I think there is one truth, but I think that the filter of our subjectivity creates many expressions of that. And so in my own life, I express myself quite a lot through journaling. I write, and every single journal entry starts, "Dear angels, guides, and my higher self," because to me, that is sort of the totality of how I understand my spiritual journey. But it's a walking prayer, it's a walking meditation, and I think that people can have many different paths. What I've tried to teach my children is that they're going to find their own way. And I have purposely and intentionally exposed my children and myself to a lot of different religious beliefs and a lot of different spiritual beliefs. And we have good friends who are Muslims, and we have good friends who are agnostic and who are spiritual and who are nature lovers, lots of different, kinds of expressions of that. And I think that all those make sense to me. Like there's higher power.
Yeah.
And there's one truth and one earth, but we're all in part of the human race. And I don't want to limit myself spiritually to the religious beliefs of where I happen to have been born. Because if I wasn't born in the United States of America, I might be believing a completely different religion. So that limits my belief system.
When you're meditating or any other times, are there any times when you feel you're in a space where you really feel connected to God?
Yeah. When I'm playing music, when I'm deep breathing, when I'm in nature, certainly walking in the woods, my husband and I have our most profound conversations, and that when we need to really work out something deep or heavy, we go to the woods, because it's just like being amongst the trees that are so much bigger than you, and they're so sturdy, and I can look up at the sky and it's so still. Or I can go to our lake that's in the neighborhood and just see the still water and think, nature is so calm. And when you can have the sense of these trees are so strong and they have deep roots and they are towering in the sky, they've grown so large, they've grown large, much larger than me, but their growth is unnoticeable. Like you can't notice that a tree has grown an inch since yesterday, but still it grows. And so, it's very subtle, but it's very, very powerful. And so nature reminds me to just allow myself to be still and not to feel like I have to have all those waves in my life.
Right. You and I used to do the eye gazing, and you were the first person that I ever did that with. And that to me was so absolute. And doing that with you and with other people is such an absolute for me of how we are all connected.
Yes. And I would actually be very interested to see how that experience would go in light of my recent study of myself and my ego and stripping it away. Because when you get down to what's left is right here in the soul. The eyes represent the soul to me. And so when you see yourself, when we used to do that, I would sort of see your face and your body fall away and just fall into the love, the sense of this is all there is right here. This is love.
Right.
And to have that sense reflected back to you, it's very powerful.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. So did I. So did I. So you have learned things about yourself through this time. Has the world taught you anything in
Oh
2020?
yeah.
I mean, this has been just an unbelievable year.
What
So
a year.
yeah.
What a year. So after the pandemic, I worried a lot about the finances of the world, the finances of our country, because I was seeing so many people who were having to stop work or losing their jobs for various reasons. And then June hit, and we see George Floyd stories, and we start to hear about Black Lives Matter, and it just becomes such an unstoppable movement that it mattered so much. And what I love about it is also what I hate about it. It's that we had to do something. It was so shocking and it was so unbelievable that you hated it and you had to take action. But what I love about it is it's caused us to bring to light in everyday conversations, and certainly in corporate America, because I hear many coworkers and many people in different companies talking about having similar conversations, that it's bringing to light some feelings about race in America that we have brushed under the rug for so long. And as a white person, I can say naively, I didn't realize, but I can't say that, because I did realize.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't say that. I won't say I didn't realize that racism was still happening in America. But I will say that I was in an echo chamber of my own bubble of friends who were very diverse and very inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not have a sense of how much the experience of a person of color was still being actively threaded through their day, every day, all day. And it's because of the grace that people of color in my bubble of the echo chamber offered me to say, I know that you're not like this, and I'm not going to give this to you. I'm not going to give this hurt to you, and I'm not going to give this pain to you for what you may represent in the color of your skin. The grace of people caring about me as a person protected me from having an understanding of how deeply pervasive this really is. I didn't see the microaggressions that were happening all day, every day to people. I didn't see or hear about that we had people whose, fellow parents whose sons were calling terrified to say, Mom, I've been pulled over because we had an accident and they want to call the police. And they're terrified because they have to call the police. And this now starts to get posted on Facebook amongst friends that I have that have always been in my echo chamber bubble of friends, of people who are inclusive and that we all have respect for each other. But they were having an experience that I didn't understand. And that was not a service that either one of us should have been doing to each other, because I need to hear the pain to be able to express my voice and to express my discontent. And we definitely cannot allow this to be part of our culture. And as I told you earlier this week, it's not, I've never been truly proud to be a Southerner, especially as a white person in the South. But this year, I don't feel proud to be an American. I don't feel proud to be in this country where this kind of blatant racism and marginalization of people and inequity and outright violence is legitimized and sanctioned and brushed under the rug as just being part of life. I don't feel proud of us as a nation. Mm-hmm. And we need to be better. We have to be better. So that's what I've learned for 2020. What I've also been able to see is that we can bring very hard conversations into the workplace, and we can bring vulnerability. And I think we've been able to do that a little bit because we're working from home, because you can turn off the monitor and go if you have to. After
you
a tough
can
conversation,
turn off the monitor and go where?
Cry.
Oh.
Go cry.
Uh-huh.
Because people are having very hard conversations and they're very raw. And I've seen many people come back to a meeting after, a tough conversation about race where we became very vocal and very vulnerable, and you could tell that they've been crying, and you can even tell that they've been crying for days, you know,
Now,
and I've been crying.
are these all people of color, Black people? Do you find this among your white coworkers or the other
Oh yeah,
participants that they've been
yeah,
crying, that they've been
yeah.
really
hmm
upset and jolted?
Everybody. I think that what has come out, we've had a whole lot of conversations about this at work. We're talking probably 2 or 3 times a week in various, you know, scheduled sessions where anywhere from 20 to 80 people will be on a call together. And we have breakout sessions so that they can, you know, because sometimes you don't feel comfortable speaking in front of a group of 80 people. So you have breakout sessions where you can be more vulnerable. One thing that I've heard over and over again is that people of color are surprised at how much they feel traumatized by the experience. And, you know, sometimes people will come on the call and just be like, well, of course, I've been dealing with this for so long, and this is how I go about my day. But then other people of color have come on the calls and said, I did, and I was, and I can tell you stories. Everybody has a story of being marginalized or being treated differently or being treated less than. So everybody has a story. There's no exceptions to that. But some people have put on their armor and said, it doesn't bother me. And this is just part of what you have to deal with. And I don't let it get into my consciousness. And I just go about my day. And now they're starting to peel away that outer layer and say, it does bother me. And I am sick. I am sick that I have covered this up and said I'm okay when I'm not okay. And that has gotten me more times this summer. Having people discover this pain within them that they had buried so deeply that they didn't even know was there.
I wonder, is some of it the experience of George Floyd, you know, being a witness the way we have been through the video of George Floyd and everything else this year and everything before this year? Is it all of that compounded? Because I think that for most people, it has been a way of life. It hasn't been any kind of secret. It's things that people talk about. You might talk about amongst your friends or family or even acquaintances because it's something that's just kind of common. But I know that for me, and it's always been something I've been, when I encounter it, if it's something that's blatant, even more subtle sometimes, it's something that I've always addressed since I was a child because I was raised to address it. But everything since George Floyd has it created this anger. And so that was the emotion for me. And for somebody else, it might have been the sadness. But for me, there definitely a sadness, but it created this anger. And I'm not an angry person in general. I don't have a temper. You know, I have to be pushed really hard to snap. But this just this anger. And maybe it was something, I don't know if it was something that was buried, but it was something that was triggered. As if you reach a point with anything, you could reach a point with anything. Doesn't have to do with race, just something that bothers you. And you just reach a point where you're like, enough across the line.
I think I've given it a lot of thought, and I don't have all the answers, but I've got some hypotheses, and you can tell me if this resonates with you or not. I think there's two pieces. One is we have seen this legitimized this year, and that is the shocking part that we cannot look away from, that angers us, is that, you know, George Floyd was a shock, but we've seen this shock before. And what's even more shocking is that we have seen since George Floyd more people, more police officers putting their boots on people's necks, and more people being shot in the back on public TV and while being recorded, and they continued on.
We saw,
and so it legitimized it. We saw it before George Floyd, but when it's out loud and it's happening while protests are happening, and you still see police doing this, and you still see these reactions happening, it's legitimizing that. And you have a president who legitimizes it. And it's just, those things are completely unacceptable in our society. Like, we cannot say we're doing civil rights or human rights of any kind and legitimize this kind of behavior. So that creates the anger to me. And then the sort of the raw tapping of the inner core, I think, has been the great unbottling, that because of this shock and because of companies, corporate America coming out to say, make statements to say, we don't support this and we're going to stand with you. And you've got, athletes taking a knee instead of, pledging to the flag and that kind of stuff. I think that those events are creating such a permission to be expressive that it's allowed this unbottling to say, I am angry. Yes, I'm angry. And yes, I'm raw. And yes, I'm traumatized. And I'm just now giving myself permission to be those feelings. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been important for us to go through this. So I hope that we can have the experience of doing this unbottling and saying, no, this is not okay in any form, and let this be a year of transformation.
Yeah.
Of really upskilling our game on the racism conversation.
Yeah. No matter what happens in our elections, there's still a division. And the people who are filled with hate, to me, that can't be ignored. And, there has to be a healing and a solution for all of us, not just those of us who are in pain. There has to be a solution for people who are inflicting the pain, because otherwise nothing will ever change. And some people are not going to change their minds. They're just going to think what they think. But I don't think, say if there's a side of people who are inflicting the pain, the haters. So say we just have a whole side of haters. Well, some people are never going to change their minds. They're just going to think that. But that's not the whole side. Some people are going to get weary. Some people were talked into the way they think. I think it's very important for our country and world to not ignore, to not disregard the haters and the people who are inflicting the pain, because otherwise it'll keep going. It'll just keep going.
I agree with you. And yet on a spiritual level, I don't want to be the Pollyanna person who says, let's just go to love, because.
And that's not what I'm saying.
No. I'm agreeing. Yeah. I think we have to have some out loud structural consequences for this kind of behavior. Mm-hmm. And at least, I've coined the term earlier this summer to say, send the rats back to the hole, because you can't just have hate out loud and sanction that. You cannot legitimize that. And that we have to stop. But I also look to experiences of history, such as in South Africa, where Nelson Mandela took those who had been in fear and who had been persecutors and prosecutors of the Black men, and he was one. And when he turned and started to rule and to lead, he brought unity back to the country. And you can argue that there's been, still a lot of division, but he didn't just go around arresting all the white people who had been the persecutors. He actually took some of the policemen and put them on his force and said, I want you to join me. And they had to choose whether they did or not. But I think there's got to be some way that we can find our way towards a solution that doesn't just involve us turning into haters, because that then lowers our vibration.
I also say that since 2016, there's a whole contingent of people that we probably would have never been aware of, who are filled with hate and resentment. And it's not just people over there. There are people in the community, in the neighborhood, just who are close by that we never would know of. And so I would rather know of this than it just be, don't talk about it. Don't talk about it. I don't need to know. I would rather know. And to me, that's how things start getting addressed and things, changes start happening. Because we can't, if we're in denial about something, it's never going to change.
Oh, yeah. No, we don't need to be in denial. We definitely don't. We need to create a safe space for people to be able to express themselves. And by the expression of the pain, we can start to look at those areas that need to be, shine the light in the dark corners and bring them out and say, no, this is not okay.
Absolutely.
That needs to be fixed.
Absolutely.
That needs to be fixed. You can't change people's hearts, but hopefully that will happen on its own.
Yeah.
Time,
yeah. I know that you don't have a lot of time. I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this.
My great pleasure.
And this doesn't have to be our only conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Adrianne. This is good conversation you're hosting.
Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for joining us. Remember, you can listen to all of our podcast episodes on traditional platforms. And remember to please leave us a review. We'll see you next time. Let's start healing.